What up, Saints? Love y'all as always. Just wanted to talk to y'all for a minute about what's on my mind. I learned something new. I didn't actually learn something new, but I learned terminology or verbiage to describe something that I've always known. Something I used to always say is that it takes way more faith to not believe in God than it does to believe in God. Blind faith at that. That if you, through logic and reason, you can only come to the conclusion that God is real. But the term that I've learned now is that people who don't believe in God can only come to the conclusion to not believe in God through prejudice assumption. They can't come to that conclusion through logic and reason. They have to come through it through blind assumption based on a predetermined stance of disbelief. Basically, they have to ignore logic and reason in order to come to a conclusion of disbelief. And that goes even beyond not believing in God, but coming against or believing opposed to anything that is right with God. Anything that you believe in being right, that God says is wrong, you can only come through that understanding through prejudice assumption. You cannot come to that belief through logic and reason. Even if something as simple as homosexuality, you can't come to the conclusion that homosexuality is right through logic and reason. Even if you remove God from the picture, and let's just say you don't believe in God, the very structure of nature tells you that homosexuality is wrong. The very structure of human anatomy, male and female, and how these two parts integrate and become one to create another, tells you that it's wrong. That's just logic and reason. You have to ignore logic and reason in order to say that it's right, or create your own made up standard. You know, they say, love is love. A lot of them use love as love to justify it. But we're not talking about love. We're talking about sex. You would argue against your own logic because you can't use logic to come up with that conclusion. You have to lie to yourself. If a parent, and excuse me for saying this, it's a terrible thing, but if a parent were having sex with their 3-year-old child and they said, love is love, would you be like, oh yeah, love is love? No, you wouldn't. That's illogical, because we're not talking about love. We're talking about sex. Yes, love is love, but does love require sex? No, it doesn't. We're getting to this picture that I have up here, my body, my choice. The whole abortion debate, the whole abortion thing. And abortion is nothing new. You read your Bible, people were aborting their babies, or more or less sacrificing their babies to obtain whatever their version of a better life was, what they thought would be a better life. Way back in biblical times. They would throw their babies into a fire, sacrifice them to Moloch to have a better life. But even now, people aborting their babies, why are they doing it? To have a better life. I feel like my life will be better without this child. So I'm going to sacrifice it. I'm going to kill it. Him or her. It's nothing new. And the whole abortion process, it started with witches. They would intentionally get the witches in their covenant or their coven pregnant and then sacrifice through abortion those babies to Satan. And the same witches that did these practices are the same witches who started abortion clinics. But beyond all that, back to logic and reason. And how you have to lie to yourself to come against something that is logically and reasonably understandable to those who believe in God's word. So the people who proclaim that abortion is good, they say that they are pro-choice. Pro-choice. But are they actually pro-choice? Who's choosing? Because to say that you're pro-choice means that you believe that this decision should be made by choice. But do you actually believe that? Because they're actually saying that the woman should make the choice. But is it not also the father's child? You don't believe the father should have a choice. Is it not the baby's life? But you don't believe the baby should have a choice. And even with this sign, my body, my choice, whose body is being sucked out and, grinded to death, which is what happens. It's not your body. It's the baby's body, but does the baby have a choice? No. So logically, you're not pro-choice. But since every man has belief and the truth of God upon them, and you know you're wrong, you have to justify yourself by coming up with this false, illogical idea of pro-choice when you yourself are not actually pro-choice. You're just using that to justify your prejudice, pre-positioned stance. You're not pro-choice, because if you were pro-choice, you would say, well, what does the baby want? You would say, well, what does the father want? But you're not saying that because you're not pro-choice. There's no logic behind that terminology. And again, it is your body when you chose to, and it was your choice. It was your body and your choice when you chose to have sex, knowing that a baby could come from it. That was your body and it was your choice. But now that the baby is there, it's beyond just your choice. What about the baby? What about the father? You can't say that you can kill the baby, right? And you'll say that. Dave Chappelle even said it. You can kill the baby based on pro-choice. But you'll demonize the father if based on pro-choice he chooses not to take care of the baby because he doesn't want to have a baby. So you're really not pro-choice because you won't give the father a choice. It's all satanic. It's all satanic. And I don't want to even get caught up on the whole abortion thing. We know that's satanic. But the logic and the thinking is satanic and evil. Carry that understanding when you see the enemy moving. Use logic